Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Virginia City Council Chambers. This is a regularly scheduled City Council meeting. We'll call this meeting to order. Today's date is Tuesday, February 8th, 2022. The time is 5:30 p.m. Pam, would you please take the roll call?
Counselor Bearaboo is absent. Friedlieb?
Present.
Paulson? Present. Beyondich? Present. Johnson?
Here.
Aaronzelli? Cuffey?
Present. Would everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you, and welcome to everyone in the audience this evening and those who are watching at home. We'll move to item 4 on the agenda, which is the public forum. This is an opportunity for any members of the audience to address the city council this evening. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to do so at this time? Seeing none, we'll move to item 5 on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. The following items will be enacted by one motion unless a councilor or a citizen of the city of Virginia requests that the item be considered separately. Item 5.1 is the approval and correction of the minutes of 5.1A, the regular meeting that was held on January 25th, 2022, and item 5.1B, the special meeting that was held January 25th, 2022. Item 5.2 is the adoption of Finance Resolution number 22-003, the schedule of bills. Item 5.3 is approve pay estimate number 20 to Kraus Anderson for the MEC project in the amount of $17,943.48. Item 5.4 is approve the travel request for Britt C. Bennis and Pamela Bean to attend the MCFOA Annual Conference March 22nd through the 25th, 2022 in St. Cloud, Minnesota at a cost of $1,864.60, which includes both individuals. And then item 5.5 is to approve the travel request for Chris Simons, patrol officer for the Virginia Police Department, to attend the DMT-G, which is a data processing training for single DWI enforcement certification, April 13th through the 14th, 2022 in St. Paul, Minnesota, at a cost of $748.69. These are the consent agenda items that are for this evening. Looking for council action.
I'll move the consent agenda.
Councilor Johnson moves to approve the consent agenda. Is there support? Support by Councilor Freely. Further discussion? Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. I just have a question on 5.2 for the Department of Utilities bill for the IT MEC for $47,350.01. Does that, and I know we had discussed the Amoresco and the lighting, does that play into that, or is this going to be a normal amount for that utility bill for that building?
Sherry?
Mayor, councilors, to answer your question on that, the Amoresco project was started prior to the building of the Iron Trail Motors Event Center, so no. Most of the charge this last month would have been $25,659.94 in electrical. There's a demand charge also of $5,800. There's gas of $13,310. There's water, $363. There's sewer, $788. And then the city garbage is tacked on there for $1,210. And then there's, county tax and then state tax, waste management tax.
And I know I've looked before and it wasn't quite this high. Is this going to be a seasonal, or do we know?
You know, I'm just, without Brian here to back me up on my assumption, I would think because of the cold weather we've had, plus we've had a lot of activity in that building. Just this last weekend was, help me out here, what kind of hockey game? It was a little tournaments, yeah, so.
Hockey games, to be exact.
So we made over $4,000 just in the concession stand.
We know how much we paid for the product to go in that concession stand?
I can get you that.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Just trying to understand some of this, so thank you.
Thank you. So it has been moved and supported to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. To tack on Counselor Beyondich's question, Sherry, is there a way, or maybe this would be a question for Brian or for Pat Wertz even, that will be shown a breakout of how much that solar offsets the bill? Like, you know, there's got to be a way that that's being metered, I would think.
I would think so too. Also too, we gotta remember, this is almost double the size of the old miners. So this is not a bad utility bill compared to what we paid out in the old miners.
So we've paid out higher bills than this for the month of
Yes.
December for
There was
the,
a lot of what I call ventilation in that building.
and so, I don't know, maybe if we could get that information from someone, that would be great. And then it just would, you know, help us justify putting that solar panel in the precast walls there, that,
I think that was
How much
part
that
of the
offsets.
requirement for the grant that we got from the state on the 12 million.
very
So,
good.
but I would assume it's going to, but I will definitely
Thanks,
double
Sherry.
check on that. And then I can do a comparison too of the old miners to the new convention
That
center.
would be helpful. Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Paulson. Anybody else? Anyone else? Okay, the consent agenda has been moved and supported to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Move to item 6, appearances. There is no one scheduled to appear before the council this evening. Once again, this is an opportunity for anyone from the general public to come forward to speak. At this time, is there anyone that would like to come forward? Seeing none, we'll move to item 7 on the agenda, which is unfinished business. There are 3 items on the agenda this evening for this purpose. Item 7.1 is the property located at 410 5th Street South. There's been an ongoing saga of trying to address the issue with respect to this piece of property. And we do have in the audience today, Mr. and Mrs. Kingsley, who are at least one of the affected neighbors by this property. And so do we have any other information that we can disseminate to the public or to Mr. and Mrs. Kingsley to date? Brian, do we have anything?
Mayor, I can give just a brief update.
Thank you.
I have drafted a full package for the process under the hazardous building provisions. One of the things that I'm looking for to fill in the resolution that the council would need to pass to kick that process off formally is we're looking for a consent to get inside that house to go through and collect specific items. One of the issues, and I understand that the condition of the property is very bad, but one of the things as a legal matter that we need to do is identify specifically for the property owner the things that would have to be remedied in order for them to be in compliance. And so I'm at this point working to try and compile that list, and I expect that the next committee of the whole meeting will have the formal document brought before the council.
Thank you, Brian. Anything else? Any questions, comments, or concerns from the council first? Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Did we have an inspection date set at this point, or are you trying to compile this list in order to set the inspection date?
If I may.
Yes, Brian. Brian?
We've got two alternative ways that we can go in and conduct an inspection. One is to get a signed consent form authorizing us to go in, and the other is to have an administrative warrant pulled through the courts. And that administrative warrant process takes some time. We're hoping that we can get a consent to go in.
And so have we executed paperwork for that consent agreement?
Everything is drafted and we've reached out to the
That's what
property
you're
owner.
referring to, okay. And then the other question that I had is, I had some question, and I don't know, I think I spoke briefly with you, Brian, about this, regarding a contract for deed versus lien that could be either against the property or against maybe an umbrella of properties. Did we find that information out, if there is a lien associated with that in order to validate the sale of a contract for deed purchase?
Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. From the public records that we're able to access, it appears that this property is pledged as collateral under a larger umbrella note. To the best of what we're able to find, it appears that there was a contract for deed at some point that was put in place, but it appears that that contract for deed has either been canceled or abandoned. It doesn't appear that it continues in full force and effect. When we, for my purposes, from a legal standpoint, when I'm looking for the property owner, I'm looking for the investment company or the individual that's listed as a record owner on the tax rolls.
So, and the reason I'm digging deeper into this is mainly because of the name of the party on the St. Louis County tax rolls would be then different if the contract, at our last meeting, I believe we were told it was, when Colleen was here, I think we were told that it was recorded. It was in fact a recorded contract for deed. What happens if it's dead? Then do they re-record it and then re-reflect on St. Louis County taxes, who is the responsible party for that purpose? And there's a reason for my asking this, but if you could answer that.
Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. And so the answer I'll give is this. As a safest practice, we're going to try and get a hold of anybody who's mentioned in title.
Very good.
So the best rule when you deal with real estate is serve everybody. I understand that the individual listed on the tax rolls may be living out of state and is maybe fairly non-responsive, but in any event, we'll make a reasonable effort to get in touch with everybody who's involved.
Very good. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. Okay. Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. And I see further down the list, our rental code ordinance. When that is finalized, does that play into any of this when we go in and do that inspection? If they intend supposedly for rental?
Right now, we're talking about the Property Maintenance and Preservation Code and how we enforce the issues with respect to what Mr. and Mrs. Kingsley and the other neighbors were looking at. The renter code component, if it will kick in, Brian, is that correct? With respect to if in the event that they try to rent this property, there's a rental code requirement they're going to have to comply with based upon what's in this proposed document. Is that correct, Brian?
Correct.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else with respect to this property? Mr. and Mrs. Kingsley, we're moving forward. Please come forward, Mr. Kingsley, and thank you for your patience, and thanks for coming to the council meeting this evening.
So do we have any kind of time frame on when we're going to be issuing papers to these folks? You said that you'd reached out. Have you had any response from the property owner yet?
Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. Not at this point.
And so when does he get served these papers, and how long does he have? I want a time frame on how far out we're going to be delayed here.
Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. So the process would be, we've got to collect some information, some specific information so that we can draft a resolution. Once that resolution is drafted, it would come before this body for a decision, and at that point, the property owner would be invited to that meeting to participate in those proceedings. And what generally occurs, assuming that the information in the inspection report comes back and shows that there's hazardous conditions at this property, which based on the accounts that you provided, it sounds as if it will. The council would pass that resolution that declares the property a nuisance. And then the second step of that, at the same meeting, the council would also, by motion, issue an order, a corrective order, that lists specifically what items the property owner needs to adjust or needs to bring up to code to be in compliance. And then that property owner is given a period of time up to 120 days to meet that compliance requirement.
So within 120 days, that's the farthest it could be bumped out at that point.
Correct. And then if that property owner isn't in compliance after that 120-day period, then the city is authorized to take its order that it issued to the courts and have the courts affirm the order, and then it carries the weight of a judicial order. And once that occurs, then the city is authorized to step in to take whatever steps are necessary in order to bring the property into compliance, and we can charge back the cost of doing that to the property owner.
That's a lot to digest. Any other questions, Jules? Okay, well, I appreciate your continued work on it and hope that we can move forward as rapidly as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Kingsley. Appreciate that very much. And really do appreciate the patience that you have as we make this effort to make sure this gets taken care of as quickly as possible. So thank you. Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have an issue with what Brian just said. So from what I just heard is that this, through whatever process, and the city has finally gets access to the property, then there's a list of things that need to be brought into compliancy, but if the property owner does not bring those things into compliancy, then the city has to bring those things up into compliancy? And we can't go through a condemnation process? Like, I don't think the city should have to go to do anything to private property to bring it into compliance.
Brian?
And I would start a condemnation proceeding at that point.
Thank you, Mayor. And Counselor, the difference is when we talk about condemnation, there's a couple of different ways that we can look at it. One of the concerns always when we're doing condemnation or working with condemnation is that we may intentionally or inadvertently end up in an eminent domain situation
You had mentioned that before, yep.
where it's found that the city has taken property without appropriate course. The beauty or one of the strong points or advantages of the city of going through the hazardous building provisions and following that process is that we never take ownership of the property, and so we never have to worry about those eminent domain issues. We aren't required at any point to pay compensation for any property. We're simply requiring that they follow through, bring the property into compliance, and if they're not able to do that, we're able to step in and take any steps up to and in some cases including raising the structure. And then we bill it back to the property owners. And if they don't make payment on that bill, we can put it on the tax rolls as a special assessment.
And if I may, we can give you an example of something the city did do that, went through that process with the abandoned apartment building on the corner of 8th Street South and 3rd Avenue. That's a process we followed and eventually used the court process in which to get an order for demolition, in which the court did approve that. The building was demolished. There's a cost associated that the city incurred, and that was billed back to the owner and eventually put on the property tax rolls for that owner to pay.
And I understand that, but I think where I'm coming from is that this process is taking so long with no activity or no action. And how long did it take the 8th Street property? I'm not sure for that process. But what I would like to do is start a process immediately with a paper trail that would follow. I mean, if there's no corrective action within 120 days, that would mean that there's no intent to do the corrective action. And then, then what is the next mechanism there? You're saying it still needs to be brought into compliance at some point, or we go through this other process. Maybe somebody needs to give us a list of what avenues that we can go down and the timeframes that are involved with each of those processes, because I think I'm starting to get frustrated. It feels like we're on different tracks when we have different conversations. So I just want to get on a track that makes sense. And, obviously we need to go through the legal procedure and be fair to those involved. But if there is no intention, then I feel like we need to understand what our rights are to alleviate the situation that exists in that neighborhood. Does that make sense to you?
Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. It does, and I can put together a form or kind of a flow sheet that would outline for the council the different methods or approaches that we could take and kind of highlight some of the strengths or risks that are involved with each of those methods. And I'll try and put it into something that's user-friendly.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. Mr. Kingsley?
Yeah, so that brought up a few more things. Thanks, Julianne. So if we go into the property, when you go into the property, at that point, couldn't you determine on a rough estimate that if it comes back to where the city's responsible for doing it, this place isn't worth it, and condemn it at that point instead of going beyond? I mean, couldn't we combine two things there? Because I've talked to at least a few people who've been in that dwelling and assessed the value of it, and they've all said, there's no amount of money you can put into that you would get back. It's a lose situation. To bring that building up into compliance, you will be money way behind.
Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this hazardous building course that we're endeavoring upon, it's not mutually exclusive to any other course. If at any point the circumstances change and new information is brought to light that creates a more advantageous approach through another avenue that's available to the city, then we would be able to change course or have parallel courses moving at the same time. The information that we'd received initially from Mr. Cole, having not been in the property, was that the property may still be structurally sound, which is why we've got to go in and do a further inspection and investigation.
Mr. Kingsley?
And Julianne, you had mentioned that there's a lien against the property. Is my understanding, is that public record, do we know? Is that something a person can find out who holds that lien?
Correct, it is entered upon in the St. Louis County land records.
Okay. So then a person could go in and contact that mortgage company and find out if indeed that building's insured.
Correct. Well, I'll qualify that by saying I'm not sure that a financial institution would provide any information unless you had a release from the property owner. But you could make, a person could make the inquiry.
They would probably be very interested if the property wasn't insured. Okay. And so you go in, the city spends the money and brings it up to what they think is in compliance, and you said then you charge that back against the taxpayer. What happens to the taxpayer when he doesn't pay that?
Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. It becomes a tax lien, and presumably we would try to recapture it upon the tax forfeiture sale or other conveyance of the property.
A lien against that property?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kingsley. Okay, any other further discussion with respect to the property at 410 Fifth Street South? I think this is a process we've started recently to move this thing forward. It's been a long period of time, could have been done a long time ago. We didn't do it. We're in the process of doing it now, and I think we're making headway moving forward. So the time frame in which we need to comply with the law, and we're moving forward with all those avenues and putting that together for us, Brian. We'll look forward to that for resolution at the next meeting that we have available for that, for us to take immediate action with respect to this property. So thank you for that. Anything else on item 7.1, the property at 410 Fifth Street South? Okay, seeing now, we move to item 7.2 on the agenda, which is the clinic lease. We don't have any more information. Do we have any more information regarding the clinic lease? We already know that when it expires, we know that we need to take a look at the person, the entity that's occupying that. So do we have any other information, Britt or Sherry, about the clinic lease? If you could just refresh for the council's information and for the general public, the clinic is leased by Essentia Health, and it's an HRA bond. So lease that there's a lease expired and the bond payments expired. So you can tell us the difference in the time frame in that regard.
Sure.
Thank you.
The bond for the clinic was under the HRA, and the lease agreement with Essentia ends on June 30th, 2025. In 2018, we refinanced the bond for a lower interest payment, and the payments now will end on 2030. So you got a 5-year window there that I'll just have to work with Brian and Britt and Essentia so that we see what happens. Because the lease payments end on 2025. That's the year.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions with respect to that moving forward? Councilor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. Sherry, I was under the understanding last time we discussed this that the lease expired in '23 and the bond was paid for in 2025. I've never heard 2030.
Okay, there was assumptions that when we talked about it, but we had no backup. So I do have the backup, and I will send the paper around to the council.
Okay, so the bond goes through 2030. And then the clinic lease expires in 2025. So we will have a potential 5-year gap.
That the city will make the payments out of their own general fund.
And the city can't renegotiate a lease with Essentia for those 5 years. That's what I would assume would have to happen.
Well, that's what we're aiming for.
Yeah, so maybe I thought it was truncated to 2023 and 2025. I thought those were the years. So you're saying now it's 2025 is the year that the lease is
The lease expires on June
terminates.
30th, 2025, and
Okay.
I'll send you the paperwork.
Yeah, and I got that. That's why it's on here, so we can talk about it and what we need to do about it. So I don't know how premature we are or we would be to be discussing extension of that lease option throughout the term of the bond. And I don't know if that's something we need the HRA to enter into a discussion with, but I would make a motion that we at least have a preliminary discussion regarding the gap, 5-year gap there between the lease and the bond expiration, and that we set a meeting maybe at our next committee of the whole that we can actually talk about this. That would be my motion.
Okay, thank you. Do you have the motion, Pam? Okay, the motion, if I understand it correctly, is to have a discussion about the clinic lease at the next committee of the whole meeting. Is that correct?
Yeah, with all parties that are concerned, and I would think that we need to include the HRA.
Not necessarily,
Dana?
no, because the way the agreement reads is that if the HRA, their HRA bond is getting paid one way or another, either by the city or the Essentia, so the HRA has no concerns because it's being paid by
Whose asset is it once it's paid for?
HRA.
So do they need to be part of that discussion?
No, because the city has the second guarantee.
Okay,
Essentia guaranteed it first, but city's the second, so
We're
it's
the
always going to be
second.
paid by
okay,
somebody.
okay.
So we did have a conversation with Dana last week, John Sullivan and I, about the Public Safety Center, and then on top of that, we mentioned also the clinic lease, and Dana had mentioned, well, you do realize the city took second position, that you guys would pay that if Essentia backed out, the city agreed that they would pay
So I think we need a conversation.
we need a conversation.
Okay.
But it took a long time to refinance, so it does take many years, so if we should be talking to Essentia
Okay.
sooner than later.
So then that would be the motion. If HRA doesn't need to be involved, then it would just be to put it on our next committee of the whole for discussion item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Motion by Counselor Paulson. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Counselor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 7.3, the rental code ordinance. I think I would ask John, any information with respect to the rental code ordinance and how we are progressing moving forward?
Thank you, Mayor. The Planning Commission did discuss the rental code ordinance at their meeting last night. I still, excuse me, I have the draft minutes, and we're going through those yet, so those haven't been solidified yet. We went through a potential timeline for running the rental ordinance through with the Planning Commission, and in your upcoming packet, you will be receiving that information. And I had worked with that timeline with Britt for what the Planning Commission needs to do, so that'll be forthcoming.
Thank you, John. Any other questions with respect to the rental code ordinance as we move forward to the next steps? Seeing no other information, no other questions. Thank you, John. We'll move to item 8, discussion items. Item 8.1 is to appoint Bruce Johnson to the Public Utility Commission for a 3-year term ending 1/31/25. It's a reappointment. Moved by Counselor Beyondich. Is there support? Support. Support by Counselor Freely. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 8.2 is appoint Darrell Napper to the Evelyn, Virginia Airport Authority for a one-year term ending 12/31/22.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Paulson. Is there support? Support by Counselor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 8.4, today we had interviews at the Personnel Committee. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Thank you for that. I missed 8.3. Adopt Antonio Bertucci to the Cable Commission for a 3-year term ending 12/31/24.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Paulson, supported by Counselor Barnzelli. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Pam. Now 8.4. We had a Personnel Committee meeting in the City Council chambers at 4:30 in which we interviewed 2 candidates for the Park and Rec Commission. There was an opening on the board. There was some, we interviewed, there's discussions. 2 applicants were interviewed for 1 opening. And so we had a motion at that City Council, or at that Personnel Committee meeting. And so after discussion and interviews with the 2 candidates, it was moved and supported at the committee level to appoint Jenny Marquardt to the vacant spot on the Park and Rec Commission for a 3-year term ending 1/31/25.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Johnson. Is there support? Support by Counselor Friedlieb. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Move to item 9, committee reports. The committee of the whole meeting that was held on February 1st, 2022. And we'll turn this part of the meeting over to our city administrator, Britt C. Bennis. Britt?
Thank you. On February 1st, at the Committee of the Whole meeting, we had a presentation by Ed Alto, our Public Works Director, our interim Public Works Director. We had to have him come back due to a COVID outbreak at our Public Works Department. He discussed a request to purchase a pothole patcher that was put in the 2022 budget. It was moved and supported to approve the purchase of a 2-ton Falcon asphalt recycler and hot box trailer for the Public Works Department in the amount of, what was that other amount? It was $30,022.
$30,022. Okay, thank you. Looking for a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Friedlieb to approve and adopt this resolution, supported by Counselor Barnzelli. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Chief Alan Lewis and Battalion Chief Kevin Poffs there discussed the purchase of a new ambulance. If the ambulance was ordered now, it would be received in mid-2023. It was moved and supported to authorize the purchase of a 2023 Horton Ford ambulance in the amount of $274,409 under state bid pricing.
And this would be held at 2022 pricing.
Correct.
Thank you.
I'll move to approve.
Moved by Counselor Paulson to approve and supported by Counselor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Friedlieb?
So this has been pre-budgeted, Sherry, and is not reliant on revenue? Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Friedlieb. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. I'm sorry, what was that?
So we've preliminarily planned for budgeting this item for '23.
Along with a few other capital items that the department heads would like. Yes.
But it'll be generally funded, it's not going to be revenue
No,
reliant?
it'll probably be a bond fund.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, so to clarify, it's to purchase for delivery in 2023, the Horton ambulance. It'll be on the 2023 budget, but ordering it now because it takes a long period of time which to build it. In addition to that, we get to keep 2022 pricing. Is that correct? Okay, moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries.
It was moved and supported to authorize allowing the mayor and the city administrator to sign the airport rescue grant agreement for the Evelyn, Virginia Airport.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Johnson and supported by Counselor Barnzelli. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries.
It was moved and supported to adopt the resolution to hire Colton Anderson as a dual-role firefighter EMT.
Moved by Counselor Beyondich. Is there support? Support by Counselor Paulson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries.
It was moved and supported to direct staff to work with the appropriate people to develop guidelines for all our city commissions so that we can work on better advertising to get people to apply for some of our commissions.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Johnson. Is there support? Support by Counselor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries.
There was discussion held regarding the event coordinator position at the Iron Trail Motors Event Center. After much discussion, it was moved and supported to allow staff to set up a meeting at the Iron Trail Motors Event Center to review the job descriptions and present visual scenarios in the process of event scheduling.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Johnson and supported by Counselor Friedlieb. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
It was moved and supported to approve the full-time equivalent advanced clerical technical assistant for the Public Works Department and to set a meeting with AFSCME to discuss the wage and present to the council for further discussion.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Johnson, supported by Counselor Paulson. Further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries.
It was moved and supported to approve the 2022 liquor license for Polly's LLC and doing business as Polly G's contingent upon submitting all required paperwork.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Freely, and supported by Counselor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries.
It was moved and supported to approve the request for the use of 2 golf carts for the Earth Fest to be held on Saturday, April 23rd, 2022.
So moved.
Moved to approve by Counselor Johnson and supported by Counselor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries.
It was moved and supported to adopt the resolution to approve the purchase of 102 9th Street South, Virginia, Minnesota from Gregory and Jennifer Stevens in the amount of $61,600.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Johnson. Is there support?
Support for discussion.
Support by Counselor Freely for further discussion, just for the public's edification and information, that this is a parcel of the property that's within the area of purchase for the new public safety building. Counselor Freely.
We did receive some information from Northeast Technical or Northern Technical Services. Does that have any impact on moving forward with this purchasing and the development of this area for the public safety building?
No, we knew most of that already. It was not surprising.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries.
It was moved and supported to authorize the city to enter into a lease agreement with Carlson Properties North LLC for the property located at 1002 South 2nd Avenue West, Virginia, Minnesota, for a monthly rental of $750 per month.
So move for further discussion.
Moved by Counselor Freely for further discussion. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Counselor Johnson. Further discussion. Counselor Freely.
So this is an anomaly to what we've been doing in regard to the purchasing of these properties thus far. And so I'm assuming that the necessity for such is because this particular owner is not willing yet to sell the property, or is still insistent on utilizing the property in a way in which it deters us from being able to purchase it? I guess I'm not quite certain how to clarify why we're doing it in the way that we're doing it.
I would refer that clarification to our planning officer, John Sullivan. John?
Thank you, Mayor. Counselor Friedli, but we have not closed on the property yet. And this lease agreement was requested from the property owner and agreed to by the relocation specialist to make sure that we do not have a tenant in there until closing. And I anticipate closing fairly soon. And if we can't come to an agreement with closing, Brian Lindsay and I have a backup plan to add that to the list for eventual condemnation and eminent domain.
And I guess the question I would ask, then, any costs that we're incurring through this lease agreement would be added on top of the cost for the house that we buy, or it would be added into that? I mean, is it cost us more than what it would have originally, or would we still get it for what we had anticipated the appraisal price?
This is part of the relocation and acquisition cost. There are alternatives, and this is a much better alternative than having a tenant in there that we have to cover for 4 years.
So we'll be paying this additional $750 per month until we're able to purchase this property?
It's going to be only for a limited number of months versus paying relocation for a tenant for 4 years.
Oh, I see. Okay. So there is somebody in there already then?
No, the lease agreement you have in your packet says that there is no tenant in there, and there will not be a tenant if we sign this and pay the $750 a month until closing.
And eliminates the potential cost.
It does.
For somebody being in it. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Counselor Friedli. Thank you. John? Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion on this matter? Counselor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. And just one other point, in the contract, under the renewal terms, it says the lease shall automatically renew on a month-to-month basis unless either party gives written notice of termination no later than 30 days prior to the end of the term or renewal term. And John, basically is the lease will just extend up to the point of the closing date. That's the intention of the reasoning, or why the city, or Brian, why the city is entering in this type of an agreement. It's almost like a placeholder to prevent or to preclude the property owner entering into some other lease agreement with another party, and then the city having to pay for the relocation of that party and rental. So just for that clarification, it is for a brief term, and we will hope to be closing sooner rather than later, so we would be paying less of the rent going forward. Is that correct?
John or Brian? Brian?
Yes.
Yes, on both counts.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. And Counselor Paulson, I think your understanding is correct. As far as the term of the lease, there is that renewal language, but there's two separate conditions that will end this. My recollection of the language, and I'm not looking at it immediately, but my recollection is that it ends upon closing. And even if that weren't the case with the language of the lease, there's a legal doctrine called merger that basically all the city's interests would merge into title, when that interest would include the rental interest as well. So as of the date of closing on the property, it's clean.
Okay, that clarifies for you, Counselor Paulson. All right, thank you very much. Has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries.
No further items from the meeting.
Thank you, Britt. Item 10, Commission Liaison Reports. Does anyone on the City Council have a Commission Liaison report they'd like to provide this evening? Seeing none, we'll move to item 11, the Department Head Reports. Once again, I'll reach out to the department heads. I'll go from right to left. John, anything that you want to offer in the planning area?
Not at this time, but probably next month, there'll be a few more things coming. Good things, I hope.
Yes, thank you, John. Sherry?
No, I'll just get your data to you guys.
And what was that?
Data to you.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear you. I didn't know what you said. So I apologize for that. Pam?
Thank you. I just wanted to notify the public or any of the council here that filings for the city offices will begin May 17th to May 31st. We have 3 council seats and 1 mayor seat that will be open for the election this year.
Very good. Anything else, Pam?
Yes. The meeting for the Iron Trail Motors and Event Center that we had discussed previously, I did send out an email noting Wednesday, the 16th in the morning, 8:30 or whatever, if that works for everybody. I can send that paper or the notice out for that.
Okay, so the notice would be for the meeting for the Iron Trail Motors Event Center with respect to these, the motion earlier for Wednesday, the 16th of February at 8:30 a.m., is that correct? Is that amenable to everyone? Wednesday, February 16th, 8:30.
Yeah.
I mean, 8:30 a.m. Okay, thank you. Anything else, Pam? Okay, very good, thank you. Anything from the legal perspective, Brian? Do we have anything else to add?
Thank you, Mayor. No formal report.
More formal report, thank you. And Britt, anything else you'd like to add or offer? Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move to the council reports. Does any councilor have a report they'd like to give this evening? Councilor Johnson.
Mayor, today, a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, Casey Myrie came to us in a meeting and said, "Come on, follow me for a day." Today was my day. I got there at 8 o'clock, learned how to shape the ice, shave the ice, Zamboni the ice, edge the ice. That was the first 2.5 hours, and they had already been working on it for about an hour and a half. After that, it was cleaning the locker rooms, which took about 2.5 hours, and there were 3 of us doing it. After lunch, we got to erase puck marks from the glass, and that was my 8-hour day on my feet. So was able to learn a lot about just those 3 things and how labor intensive it is. And that was the thing that came from all the staff I worked with today, that the things take time because there's so much space, so much square footage, so much everything. A lot of other amazing insights from the staff that I'll be sharing with the administration and some questions to ask. But I appreciate the offer to go. Casey's asked me to come back on an evening shift because this was a Tuesday and there wasn't a lot going on. But in an evening tonight there's a hockey game. It's a whole different world, so I look forward to going and learning more. And it didn't snow last night, so that's the other part that they were happy about, that they got, because snow is the priority when it comes to that building. So just wanted to thank them for the invitation and appreciate the hard work that I saw a lot of people doing today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Any other council reports? Councilor Freely.
I just want to thank Councilor Johnson for taking the time to do that and to report to us with regard to the efforts that you put forth today and the compliments that you make towards the staff.
Yep, thank you. Okay, any other council reports? Hearing none, we'll go to, I have a couple items before we adjourn to our next meeting. First of all, last night, Monday at 6 o'clock, the Friends of the Public Safety met at the Old Gun Club. I don't know what we formally call it now, but I refer to it as the Old Gun Club. And we have some significant and spirited discussion about the importance of the public safety building and some of the concerns and comments that some of the public safety members, Friends of Public Safety, had about the building. We were able to provide, Councilor Beyondich and I were able to provide an updated information regarding that public safety building, particularly as it relates to the budget, the things that were cut, the number that was eventually agreed upon as we need a number moving forward. So it was a lot of discussion, good information, good questions that are asking. And I'll bring up this one item that was brought up by the members of the committee, and that, as we move forward looking for other avenues to pursue, thinking outside the box, we as a staff and as a council are looking for other revenue streams to help maybe bridge a gap or funding sources and things of that nature, and looking at all opportunities that we have. One of the opportunities that the Friends of Public Safety had and agreed to work on was to, maybe look at discussing a way in which you can develop donations or sponsorships by, like we talk about it at the back, actually the Iron Trail Motors Event Center. I apologize, the Iron Trail Motors Event Center. So it would be something where the donation would be given, not necessarily to name a building or anything, but it was a donation to be recognized. And this was built by the community, at such and such a time, through the city council and the staff, and with generous donations from such and such a place. So something that the Friends of Public Safety should be working on, coming back to the city council with some information and asking for some assistance moving forward. So Jan, as the secretary, formal secretary of the Friends of Public Safety, thank you for your time and efforts out there and for all the questions that you and your members had for us today. Anything else to add to that, Council Beyondich?
Thank you. No, but it was enjoyable to be there and to give everybody an update on what happens at the council level for that group. So thank you for welcoming me to be there and share the information.
Thank you. And thank you for keeping up your efforts and your energy and really promoting this new public safety building, not only within the community, but outside of it as well. So, okay. One other item is tonight, the big hockey game at the Iron Trail Motors Event Center, Rock Ridge against Hermantown. So, go Rock Ridge, go Wolverines. Let's show Hermantown that we have a competitive spirit and we can win this hockey game. So anybody who can come, please go. So again, go Wolverines. So thank you everybody for coming this evening. Thanks for everybody's hard work, particularly staff when it comes to that. And I would like to say one more thing, that we got a lot of comments from the general public and other entities about the response to our Emergency Operations Center. Thank you for the kind words at the other meeting, Councilor Freely, with respect to all the efforts made by everyone. There is a thank you that's going to be going in the newspaper, which will be a joint thank you and a brief explanation of what transpired there. It'll be sent out by the HRA and the City of Virginia. A draft was sent to our city administrator for review and will go to the HRA. So thank you for everybody for all your hard work, and that Emergency Operations Center EOP plan worked very well. So thank you for everybody for that. So stay tuned. So thank you, everybody. We will stand adjourned to our next council meeting, which is scheduled for Tuesday, February 22nd at 5:30 p.m. right here at Virginia City Hall. Have a good evening. Good night. Be safe. We stand adjourned. Go Rock Ridge. Go Wolverines. We're adjourned.